It's Trump's to lose. Hello, welcome to Dangerous Policy, a channel aimed at intelligent people wanting to discuss important issues facing life and society. My name is Crispin, and today I'm going to give another update on the US presidential election. And now I think the fault lines are becoming clearer. I'm quite convinced that President Trump is in the driver's seat to be re-elected president of the United States, and potentially by a very large margin. So in my previous video on this, I said this was at a time when he was way behind in the polls. And I said, look, ignore all the pundits that say, Biden is a shoo-in. This is unclear. There are so many contested forces. It's very uncertain. And I laid out, all the reasons why that was. And I'll leave a link in the description below so you can revisit that. But today, I think we can now see that the lines have shifted very much in Trump's favor. And there are a number of reasons for that. Number one, the Republican National Convention went extremely well for Trump. He got a significant boost. It generated a ton of enthusiasm among the Republican base. And most importantly, I think it brought all the disparate elements of the Republican establishment and its various interest groups onto one page in terms of strategy. I think they all now know what they need to do, what the argument is that they're going to prosecute, how they're going to achieve that, and where this will likely take them in terms of an electoral college result. So until the Republican National Convention, there wasn't a clear strategy. Trump had a strategy. The RNC had strategy. There was a lot of argument and debate. It didn't seem particularly organized. A lot of mixed messages about the opponents, like, is Biden corrupt? Is he senile? Is he ultra leftist? Is he someone who's going to be controlled by the left? All of these mixed messages, some of them are still kind of there, but certainly the strategy is now much more clear, and the Republicans are now playing to win. They're much more confident and enthusiastic in their campaigning, which is a huge plus. Obviously, a lot of money is being raised by the Republicans right now, which is a big deal for them. And also significantly, and this is the most significant telltale sign, the Democrats are having to shift position on pretty much everything that they had been pushing before. So they were super pro Black Lives Matter. The American public are totally against them now. Trump had been against them all the way along. They see them as rioters and vandals and, people who are engaged in all kinds of seditious activity. You've got the BLM Antifa kind of being grouped together. And so Biden has gone from saying, absolutely, I would look at defunding the police, right? Because he thought that's where the American people were, to that's crazy. Well, Trump had been saying that's crazy all the way along, and Trump, in fact, has just been endorsed by the National Federation of Police in the United States. So just to underscore that point. So Trump is where the American people are. The American people are afraid of ultra leftists taking over the agenda. They see Biden as weak, as having been there for many decades, not having achieved real outcome, certainly losing his mental faculties, that he's not going to be there for a very long time. So even if Biden himself is not a radical leftist, and he's not, everyone can see that, people are saying that he doesn't have the force of personality, the vigor, the control over the Democratic Party to resist that ultra-left push. And the tolerance that is perceived in the Americans for radical ideas like getting rid of the police forces, like, forcing everyone to take a knee, that vandalism and rioting is good, that tearing down statues, absent any due process is a positive way to progress society. The American people have utterly rejected this across the board, and there are many signs of that. So Trump is clearly in that space where the American people are. Secondly, the COVID crisis in the United States, yes, no one really defends, except for Trump himself and his administration. No one says that Trump did a fantastic job with the disease. He did say, he does have one strong point in his corner, though, which is that he did put a travel ban from China early on at a time when the Democrats and Biden were saying, no, that's totally xenophobic. Of course, you'd let all the Chinese in. Well, that's something that he can use to play over and over again. But as a rule, the Americans have the highest infection rate in the world, and we can see that. There are certain things that the Americans are doing well. They're doing testing well, and they're getting certain medical devices to everybody. Trump is right to say that everyone who needed a ventilator has had one. So that those are there are definitely some pluses, but by and large, we can see that America is an epicenter for the disease globally. And that has to reflect on the president. The issue is, though, that Americans are now looking to a post-COVID world. Not post-COVID as in the disease will be gone, but okay, we're dealing with this disease. It's had a massive impact on the economy, on everyday life, on the social disruption and dislocation of the American people, i.e. The social fabric that allows these extreme left and right to come together. Who do they want to get the economy and the country back on track? The person that had, prior to COVID, the best economy the Americans had seen in decades, the person who's resolutely behind law and order, clearly they like that message more than Biden's, let's say, petering, trying to cander to every group of people. The next reason why Trump is very likely to win now is the level of enthusiasm. So Trump was criticized by Republicans at one point, wherein when it came to mail-in voting, Trump has put a lot of aspersions on whether or not mail-in voting can be trusted, whether there'll be electoral fraud as a result of mail-in voting. And a lot of Republicans are saying, look, a lot of our voters are older people who may be, concerned about COVID, don't want to go out on election day. You criticizing mail-in voters is actually going to target our own base rather than Democrats. It'll hurt us more than it hurts them. And Trump said, no, mail-in voting is bad. Everyone has to show up and vote. Well, Trump has been proven right politically to do that, because Trump voters will see going out and voting on election day as a patriotic duty, right? That if they go out and contract COVID and die, then that is a worthwhile way to spend one's life if it means re-electing Trump. That will be their mentality. That come hell or high water, they're going to turn out on election day and vote for Trump. If you're a Democrat voter, it is perfectly obvious in every metric that none of them have any enthusiasm for Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is perceived to represent the most corrupt elements of the DNC, Hillary Clinton 2.0. Joe Biden is seen as someone who is not going to be in the job for very long. All these policy ideas are not things that the Democratic base care about. The Bernie Sanders voters are resolutely anti-Biden in many respects, as someone that they see as the worst of the establishment coastal elite. And therefore, they're not going to turn out for Biden and Kamala. So you're not going to have the young people turn out for Biden. And the older people who would benefit from mail-in voting, well, the only people who are going to go out and turn out on election day despite the virus is going to be Trump voters. Okay, unless you physically go to each house of a Democrat Biden voter and personally get their thumbprint from their front door, they're not going to turn out to a polling booth if they're genuinely afraid of the illness and vote. So the number of Democrats that are going to vote in this election is going to be remarkably low. Thirdly, there is the Trump's inroads into the African American vote. So Democrats have too visibly been taking African Americans for granted as a base, right? So in the primaries, it's important because you can't win and become a presidential nominee in the Democratic Party without a significant black vote, right? But and this is something that Bernie Sanders has seen to his great cost. His base are all kind of Massachusetts, Vermont, sort of college-educated millennials, right? Whereas Biden smashed that inertia by getting a black vote turnout in places like South Carolina. So the black vote is essential for any Democratic leader, whereas significant black figures have come out in support of Trump. And prior to the COVID emergency, Trump could easily point to the fact that, you had the highest amount of black employment on record, highest increase in wages and black people on record in his time, and a sense that, the black community have a sense of pride in itself if it votes for Republicans rather than just be a dependency. And then Biden putting his foot in it by saying, look, if you don't vote for Democrat, you're not black. And so that led to all the jokes from people across the spectrum saying, guy votes Republican, instantly turns white, So there's this sense of entitlement that is really coming across with the Democrats. And then finally, the Democrat message isn't one of positivity, right? Like at a time when things are miserable in the United States, really miserable, the Americans need a message that things are going to be better for the future. And the Democrats, what they're promising essentially is making people pay for their privilege. You need to be ashamed of American history. We're going to rewrite all the textbooks and things. This is not something that the Americans need to hear right now. The Americans need to hear that there is light at the end of this tunnel. Yes, we're going through a dark time, and there will be a more positive, hopeful, better future. And the Republicans are selling that message, particularly since the RNC. I think that has shown that one little sort of quip that someone made that I really think sums it up is, Americans, like RNC, we love America. Democrats, we hate white people. It's just this sort of identity politics being doubled down on at a time when we have real problems. And then the last thing I would say, I did say finally before, the last thing I would say is that Trump's message with China is very much in line with the American mainstream view. The Americans blame China for a lot right now. Biden has historically been incredibly soft on China. As late as this year, he was talking about how they should ease up on the commentary about China. Again, the Democrats are being pushed into an anti-China position, trying to make out that Trump was the one that was soft on China, which nobody can possibly believe and not something that the Democrats can sell. And so even aside from the debates, which I think the debates remain critical, absolutely critical, but the debates are now, it's flipped. Before it was Trump really needs an amazing performance in the debates, and for Biden to kind of have one of his massive gaffes where everybody realizes that he's lost it, right? And that was an essential kind of thing for Biden to lose. Now Biden needs to put in an incredibly powerful performance that not only puts doubts about his mental faculties, but doubts about his willingness to be there long term, because he's already kind of indicated he'll be a one-term president. So that's a very bad sign. And two, that he has a clear plan for a better future for America, and he has to sell that message in those debates. If he fails to do that, then he will lose. And then you have people like Nancy Pelosi, who says that he shouldn't be debating Trump at all. He shouldn't be legitimizing Trump through a one-to-one debate, as if you have to legitimize the president of the United States. The American people are not that thick, okay? If you don't debate the president, then that's you saying you don't think the American people have a right to decide why you should be president of the United States, and they will vote accordingly, right? So Pelosi was just way beyond the pale. But the fact that they're even suggesting this, senior figures like Pelosi suggesting this publicly, it shows that the Democrats themselves have a degree of anxiety. And I would conclude here that the Democrats themselves can feel it now, right? They can feel this slipping away from them. And it's not because they've made massive gaffes. It's just that they're not where the American people need them to be. And their message doesn't appeal to the largest voter base in the United States. And COVID is not going to save them. That was the thing that had thrown everything up in the air. It was COVID, right? Significant change to the entire entire race, impacting all different groups in different ways. But now it's clear that hurdle is not big enough for the Democrats to capitalize on. So, definitely Trump's to lose now. And I'll get Charlene to put a graphic on the screen about the betting odds and how that shifted since June. So someone had, and I'll get the tweet on the screen as well. Someone had said to me, look, should I bet on Biden at $1.55, right? It's $1.65, something like that. And I said, don't listen to 538. Don't listen to these political astrologer charlatans. They have no idea what they're talking about. And this is why. So definitely, things could change. Uncertain still, more uncertain than it was in this time 2016. But I'm now increasingly confident that Trump is going to be reelected and reelected with a large and convincing victory, which he does need, because the American people are so distrustful of politics right now and the system that if it's really close, then it could be a very contested space. So one side or the other really does need to win convincingly in order to bring the American people to accept the result. But I think Trump is in the best place to do that. If you found value in this conversation, please do like and subscribe. We talk about this very often among a whole range of other related issues. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.